I've got the delightful job of introducing our first keynote. Oh, thank you. So, my name's Kieran Hyder. I work for CFAS in the UK. I've been co-chairing the ISB with Warren. I work a lot on recreational fishing and have been for about the past 15 years. So, back to what I was going to say. I've got the delightful job of introducing our first keynote speaker, Valerio Sbragaglia. I'm sorry about the pronunciation of the surname. That was my biggest worry about this introduction, and I agree with Quasi. If I hadn't had to say it, I wouldn't have. But hopefully, Valerio can explain to me at some point over a beer this week how to say his surname. Valerio was born in a coastal town of Italy with a really strong tradition of recreational fishing. And he developed a passion for spearfishing at an early stage that shaped, I think, both his career and his life. And I think that that's very true for many of the people in the audience, that recreational fishing has brought them into the science that they do today. So he started to work with recreational fisheries with Robert Arlinghouse, as many people have in this world, where he joined his group in Berlin as a DAAD Leibniz Fellow, and I know that he spent many happy years there, both enjoying the quality of the science and, I'm told, the beer too. So most recently in Barcelona at the Institute of Marine Science of the Spanish National Research Council, he holds the Ramon y Cajal position, which is Spain's version of the tenure track, and he's working towards a permanent position. Valerio's research is broad. It focuses on advancing marine ecology and fisheries science using an integrative approach, spanning from molecular mechanisms to collective animal behavior dynamics with functional integration of the human dimensions. So pretty broad, really. His background's in behavioral ecology, but most recently he's really specialized and taken things forwards in culturonomics and ecology, which is a really exciting new area. And also focusing on climate change and the effects on marine ecosystems. He's published about 80 papers. And for those of you that don't know Valerio, I would really encourage you to seek him out, because he's both a great scientist and an all right, nice guy as well. So without further ado, I'd ask him to come up, where he'll present about his integrative research journey through recreational fishing, but how the World Recreational Fisheries Congress has actually helped him in that. And I'm hoping that we're going to hear in that about the quality of the science and potentially the beer as well. So, Valerio, please.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm Valerio Sbragaglia, that's the pronunciation. Sorry for my surname. And thanks, Kieran, for the nice introduction. And above all, thanks, Warren, Alex, and Matthew, and all the rest of the team for organizing such a nice conference in this wonderful place, and for inviting me. I'm truly honored to be here and share with you what I learned at this conference during my research journey, integrative research journey, and I will provide you some highlights on how this conference and the environment that you can breathe here helped me shaping my research vision. So I'm coming from this small town, Civitavecchia, in Latin Centuncelle, is near Rome. So we were strongly influenced from the Roman Empire, which decided to build a big harbor in our city. So if you are cruising in the Mediterranean visiting Rome, you will stop by in my hometown. As you can see, there are many cruise ships in the harbor at the moment in this picture. And also they discovered the Roman Empire, in particular Traiano hot springs. So they built these huge thermal complexes that you can still visit. But on top of that, we have a strong connection with the sea, a big commercial fishing fleets, as you can see in these pictures. And on top of that, we have this strong culture of recreational fishing. So I was used to work in this place when I was a young guy with my father, with endless anglers fishing, in particular for tournaments, because we had some champions in the town, world champions. So I was truly connected to angling at the beginning with this kind of walking with my dad and speaking with these emblematic characters of fishers and stealing secrets by them. And then as I started to grow up and I was able to handle a spear gun, I was hooked by another community with 3 or 4 world champions in spear fishing tournaments in my own town. So we have this other strong culture that shaped my integrative view of recreational fishing as a whole. So basically I started as an angler, then from 18 years old I was hooked as a spear fisher, and then I'm getting a little bit older, I'm getting back to angling. So I would define myself as an interdisciplinary recreational fisher, first of all. But yeah, as Warren already did, you can see in the website of this conference, there is a nice editorial on the reconstruction of three decades of World Recreational Fishing Conference. As you can see, this is the first time in Africa, and these are the history of the people that participated to this conference, starting with the first event that was not part of this series in 1984 in France, and then with the increasing interest in this series of conference over the years. But what is important here is to look at the title of these conferences, and then if you look at them from an integrative perspective, you can see that the world and national view that you, Angus, and Kvesi shared is that something that this conference has started to tackle from the beginning: transformation and adaptation, dynamic challenges, changing world, benefits and balancing values. And above all, what this conference is doing is crossing boundaries of disciplines to provide effective solutions and solving problems in complex social ecological system, which is what a recreational fisheries is. If you are a scholar or a researcher, in particular an early career researcher, in this context you can get lost quite easily. And what you can do is suffering the dilemma of expertise. So when you are crossing so much boundaries, you can reduce your perceived credibility in your primary field of research. So if you are a behavioral ecology and you start to integrate the human dimension into your research toolbox, maybe the behavioral ecology say, oh, what is doing this guy? So that's a key aspect that has been also already shared in this nice piece that I suggest you to read, published some time, not so much time ago. And the two authors are used to move in this conference around. If you see them, please report their behavior and presence at the registration desk. You will get a free t-shirt. But yeah, I suggest you, in particular, if you are an early career researcher, to read that piece, because it really nailed this aspect of crossing boundaries. So what about my contribution to the World Recreation Fishing Conference? My first one was in Victoria, Canada. It was edition number 8, where I participated with a couple of contributions. And then, unfortunately, the edition in Netherlands was postponed and then celebrated online due to COVID. And then the Melbourne conference organized by Taylor that is here today as well. So maybe what I learned here is basically to shorten my title, as you can see, because they became shorter and shorter. I don't know, it was not voluntarily. But if you see the contribution I presented at this conference, you can see there is a common theme, which is fish behavior and recreational fishing. This is the first part of my talk, basically looking at this aspect from the behavioral ecology perspective. And then most recently, as Kirian mentioned, I started to use the social media, in particular YouTube, for characterizing not only the monitoring aspect of recreational fisheries, but also some social ecological dynamics, and also asking macroecological questions with this type of new data. And I will show you what we did about that. So, starts with behavioral ecology, predator-prey interaction. We know that fishing is selective for specific traits, such as life history traits, but also individual behavior. And as many of you are anglers, the main piece of interest is the first paper here about timidity syndrome by Robert and colleagues. And what they say is that if you are in a natural condition, many behaviors are correlated, such as boldness, the propensity to take risk, and aggression. As you can see here, you have this nice correlation. So bolder fish are also more aggressive. And when an angler passive fishing gears kick in, what you are doing is catching more often these fish. So what is left from the population is shy and less aggressive fish. And these have big implications, not only for ecology, because these fish change their behavior and maybe there are some trophic cascades, but also for fisheries management, because the fish is still there, but is not hooking, is not biting. Okay, so this is quite important. However, despite we have this nice context, if you look at these aspects in an open system, coastal marine fisheries, in which one species can be harvested by several fishing gears, passive and active, and then we can harvest prey and predators, it's quite difficult to make predictions about what would be the behavioral change. But this makes these questions quite intriguing and challenging, so it's quite interesting to work in this context. So in my career, I focused primarily on one specific aspect of fishing, is recreational spear fishing. And despite all these fishing gears select for large fish, basically commercial for economic purposes and recreational for trophy purposes, spear fishing is a little bit different from all the rest for two reasons, among others. The first one is that it's size selective, yes, but spear fishers has a visual contact with the prey, so they can select the species and the size of the fish within the species. So they may be more effective in exerting this kind of size selectivity. And the second aspect is that spear fishers are underwater, and the kind of technique that they are using are quite similar to the predation strategy of natural predators. So ambush, sit and wait, and so we can look at the behavior of the fish and how the fish is using anti-predator responses that are typically used towards the natural predators. And so the first part of my talk will focus on these ecological aspects from the behavioral perspective, basically on predator-prey interaction and how we can use spearfishing fish behavioral interaction to understanding that. It's not only about the change in the behavior of the fish towards spearfishers, but also how these can affect, for example, natural predator-prey interactions. So this is a common description of a predator-prey dynamics. It stands with spearfisher and fish, a fish and a predator, or a lion and a prey in the savannah. It's the same. There is an encounter, detection, and identification. If the prey identify the predator, can avoid it and look for cover. If not, the predator can approach and attack the prey. And if the attack is not successful, the prey can still look for cover. And also, after the identification, the prey can also escape and look for cover. And then if there is a success of escape, the predator can still attack the prey, like a lion chasing the prey in the savannah, as you can see in these nice documentaries. And only if the escape is not successful, there is a capture. So the important thing here is that the prey cannot fail, because if the prey fails, it's dead, kaput, end. While the predator fails, and fails a lot, as do fishers. And I will explain you later how this is important for spearfishing. So in my career, basically, I focus on all these aspects of predator-prey interaction, looking at them by the eye of a spearfisher. And in particular, we use an ecological indicator, which is flight initiation distance. If you are not familiar, is the distance at which a prey perceives an approaching threat that is getting too close, and it escapes. It's something like this. And this is a metric, an ecological metric that has been used and rooted in basic ecology, which is linked to fitness and other basic biological dynamics. So let's see some data about that. This is one of our first studies on spearfisher and fish behavior, and it's on the white sea bream, highly fished species in the Mediterranean Sea by commercial and recreational fishers, including spearfishers. And here you have body size of the fish and the flight initiation distance in meters that we measured underwater during the encounters with the spearfishers or snorkelers, as you can see now. So, as you can see, when a fish encounters a spearfisher outside a marine protected area where spearfishing is allowed, there is a strong relationship with body size. So the larger fish are escaping a longer distance, as you would expect. While when the fish encounter a snorkeler, which is us, just changing our wetsuits, fins, and ending on our spear gun, you can see that the relationship is the same, but it drops a little bit in flight initiation distance. So the fish let the snorkelers get a little bit closer before escaping. And the situation totally changed when you move inside a marine protected area, when spearfishing is not allowed, because the relationship goes down of several meters. So the fish are less scary, less timid, let the spearfisher getting closer because they know it's a safe place. And then the situation is totally different when you are a snorkeler inside a marine protected area. It's the safest situation for a fish. And in particular, you can see here that this line, it's the 4 meters, it's on average a shooting range of a spear gun, and most of the fish encountering a snorkeler inside a marine protected area are performing flight initiation distance at distance that is within the range of a spear gun. So they are at risk of a potential capture. So this is nice. For behavioral ecology, you can add as many complexity as you want, habitat complexity, group size, and maybe you can ask questions and testing hypotheses for 15, 20 years, and we are doing that. But if you want to integrate that into recreational fisheries management, you need to provide how FID, is linked to fishing mortality. And this is what we did. Actually, it started with this paper, which is not from our group, by Carvalho et al., in which they simulated the use of periodically harvest closure, and they assumed that a fish was captured when it was within 4 meters from a spearfisher, which is correct, as we have seen before, because it's the average shooting range of a spear gun. And then they considered that the fish was escaping when it was beyond this distance. So, correct, but not very close to the reality. Why? In this paper, basically, we moved a couple of steps forwards in this model by adding a couple of variables more. And one is that once the fish is fleeing from a predator, from a spearfishers, in particular, in many cases, it just keeps the distance and stays in the proximity of the spearfishers. So ideally, the spearfishers can still chase it as the predator-prey interaction that we have seen before. So can be still vulnerable, even if it's keeping the distance. While in the other case, as I mentioned before, predator can fail and do spearfishers. So if you integrate the probability to fail to catch a fish by a spearfisher here, what you can see is that at 4 meters, spearfishers fail 75% of the time. And then even at 2.5 meters, spearfishers are not so, it's not 100% capture. So when you integrate this information into this model and you combine them with this empirical data that we collected, what you can see is that in the first model, when only FID is considered, the fishing mortality here expressed as success of an approach within 4 meters is quite high, 75%, 75. And these are 2 areas inside and outside marine protected area where we have worked and we have empirical data on these species. But then when you integrate the post-flight response and the probability to fail a shot by a spearfisher, you can see that the probability of being captured is quite low, in particular for larger fish, which are almost not capturable by spearfishers. So, and this is that kind of information that you want to integrate into population dynamic and stock assessment, maybe, if you want to consider and manage these aspects in recreational spearfishing. So this is one part of the story because it's direct response to a spearfishers in terms of behavior. But as I mentioned before, all fishing gears are selected for body size. They all want to catch the large fish, and spearfishers are not different. Actually are quite effective in exerting this kind of size selection. And this is something that we tackle with an experiment when I was a postdoc in Robert's lab. It's a long-term experiment, started in 2006. Now it's 20 years. How many generations? Many generations of selection. And I will not give you all the details, but it's based on zebrafish selection lines. These lines have been selected for body size, simulating fishing, so removing the large fish from the population for 5 generations. Then selection stopped, and the results I will present are generation F13, so 8 generations after the selection. And the reason for that is we want to see if there is evolution of behavior once we are selecting for body size. Indeed, there is, as we showed in several papers from this experiment, and the paper I will present today is about an integrative approach, because we behavioral track the individuals of zebrafish in the lab within a shoal, so we were able to reconstruct the trajectory of movement. Then we integrated them into a computational modeling that was able to reconstruct the behavior and then run some simulations, simulating the presence of a natural predator or simulated fishing gears. And this is how the fish look like in the simulations. They are behaving in the lab, and the red dot here is a natural predator trying to catch them. Let's see it again. So when you extract information about mortality in these kind of experiments from fishing gears and simulated predator, these are the results which I summarized for you in this graph. And then when you select for body size, so you remove the large fish, what's happening in spear fishing and in other fishing techniques, you can see that the mortality, the fishing mortality, goes down in these lines with respect to a control, which is sort of suggesting that the fish can be adapted to fishing pressure and be more resilient to that. However, the same evolution of behavior, of collective behavior, is increasing the natural mortality. So this could be a potential link with changes in behavior in response to fishing or spear fishing, if you want, and how this can propagate through trophic cascades to natural predator-prey interaction, in particular with natural mortality here. These experiments are still on. This is a recent paper published by the same experiments, which in part confirm this data, not totally, with a natural predator, but I think this is a kind of intriguing questions to ask in field experiments with complex systems to see if it holds in real systems. So to wrap it up in terms of behavioral ecology and predator-prey interaction, we have seen that we can take a common scheme of predator-prey interaction, ask questions using a recreation fishing system, in this case spear fishing, and then we can touch aspects of basic ecology, such as timidity syndrome in this case, suggesting that when the fish get timid, what we are touching as well is the basic relationship between the predator and prey interaction, as we can see here in a functional response. Basically, we have the prey density here and digestion rate here of the predator, which is predation success. And when the fish gets timid, basically this functional response can be pushed down from a type 2 to a type 3, which means that the prey density is increasing, but the ingestion rate of predators, so the predation success, is not. And this is a big issue in terms of trophic dynamics. As well, obviously, I'm not the first to say that, and there is a nice chapter in a book that was recently published about how ecology can help us to understand recreational fisheries, touching all these aspects, including integrating more fishery science. So I strongly suggest you to read this piece. So let's move to another aspect. So we left the ecological part and we move a little bit into the social part, in particular how we can use local ecological knowledge of spear fishers and recreational fishers in general, and how I started to integrate social media in this kind of experiments. So how this can contribute also to knowledge about scientific knowledge about climate change or biological invasions. So all start, this is a nice comic by a special issue published by Kirian and colleagues some years ago. I really like it because if you look at the upper part, these fishers are saying, let me read. We are a lot difficult to understand, that's why we are so diverse and disperse. You bet, we are. So this kind of dispersion, this kind of diffusion of recreational fishers, geographically especially, it's a problem for monitoring, we know, and many of you are working to solve it. But if we use and can access this network of recreational fishers, for example, using survey or social media, this can be quite powerful to ask generalized questions about macroecological patterns or understand geographical patterns at a very fine scale, as I will show you. And obviously there is a fish down there, say, more science is needed. Yes, why not? Okay, was the first study in which we used this kind of approach. It's not social media. We developed a survey for understanding effects of climate change in the Adriatic and Tyrrhenian Sea around Italy, not only in Italy, but also Croatia and other countries. And we distribute this survey using social media. That's the key here. So what we discovered is that if you look at the meridionalization index, it means how much the climate change is impact some target species in this sub-area of the Mediterranean Sea. You can see a nice latitudinal gradient in the Adriatic, means that the north part of the Adriatic is still not responding too much to climate change, while in the Tyrrhenian it's quite flat. It's not the result that is important here, is that the fact that once we were disseminating this survey, asking recreational fishers to reply on social media, we realized that much of the information was already there on social media. So why not trying to get them without asking recreational fishers? And this is what we did. You can find a very nice synthesis of this kind of methodology in this chapter of the same book I suggested before. There is also another nice paper on how we can use this data not only for monitoring but for research applied to recreational fishing. And the key aspect to consider in this kind of methodology is that we are moving across many challenges and solutions to these challenges across an active and passive continuum. So if you are developing a survey and asking recreational fishers to reply to that, this is an active engagement. So they know that they are contributing to science. While if you are mining data from social media, it's more passive. It means that recreational fishers are sharing their catches or whatever on Facebook or YouTube because they don't want to share it with researchers, but you can mine that, a part of this information, using some aspects of the platform that are thought for that. And these are big, important issues in terms of interpreting this data, but in particular for privacy and ethical concerns that you need to consider. So I know that many of you, including these guys in the pictures, are thinking about, yes, but these kind of data are biased. There are many problems with accessibility, internet penetration in different countries. I agree. So I agree to all of that. We already highlighted some of these biases and ethical concerns in papers and in various papers, but my suggestion here is not to think about this kind of data for today, like what they could do today and what can add to more robust surveys like on-site and online surveys that many of you are developing, is to think about this data and digital data when we will look like this. Okay, so 25 years maybe, I don't know, let's see it again. Some of you are seeing this young guy here now. Maybe you can recognize when it's older. So basically this was before the World Recreation Fishing Conference, and it's Warren, and in 2.5 years he was like that. So be careful if you want to organize the next World Recreation Fishing Conference. But yeah, thank you again, Warren, for all the effort that you put into that. Yeah, okay, so let's get serious. And if we look at the future, so this is the actual situation with world population. Maybe some data are not exactly placed here, but the key point is that the new generations are growing with a mobile phone and a tablet in their hands. They are quite young, they already have presence of online platforms with forming their digital culture, and I think we cannot stop that. I don't know what recreation fishing look like in 25 years, if we still have a mobile phone or everything will be on a chip in our brain. We don't know, maybe not, but let's see. What is sure is that technology innovation will play a big role, as highlighted in these nice papers by some of you. And we cannot stop the digital aspects to be more and more integrated into monitoring, as we have seen in Europe. So Europe came out with this fishing app. Recreation fishing needs to report on a fishing app, and cannot be moved back. I think this is the future. But in particular, we need to consider that the recreation fishing culture will be more and more developing on digital platforms, in particular for the new generations, those that are growing now and will represent the big part of recreation fishers in the future. So if you are interested in technological innovations, this is some marketing. Giulio will present a talk about how technology is affecting catch inequality in recreation fishing. So if you are interested, please go to see the talk. And now let's see what we have done in the past using this social media, in particular YouTube data in recreation fishing, highlighting some key aspects that we discovered. So the first study was in 2020 on the common dentex, snappers, emblematic species for fisheries in the Mediterranean Sea. And we discovered that if you plot the date of the posting of the videos by spearfishers and anglers, you can see that in spearfisher, there is a nice seasonal trend of this posting with a peak during the summer, which is possibly, our assumption is suggesting that spearfishers are more likely to catch a dentex during the summer. And this is because these species perform seasonal bathymetric migration. So during the winter moves into deep water, which is not accessible to spearfishers, while anglers, in particular using new technology, can really fish it, harvest it throughout all around the year. And so also mining data from the video we discovered, and we show that according to what was wrongly assumed from previous studies, the new videos are showing that anglers are more effective to catch larger fish than spearfishers, on average 2.5 kilos more, which is due to new technology that they are using in particular in vertical fishing. And also we access the social dimension of this kind of data, looking at the engagement, number of views of the videos by anglers and spearfishers. Spearfishers are more engaged on these species. It's not always the case. Sometimes anglers are more engaged, depending from the species. But what is important is that we can merge these two information and look at this kind of social ecological feedbacks. So in this case, the mass of the fish is a strong predictor of engagement for spearfishers, but it's not for anglers. And this can say a lot about the dynamics of these two groups fishing these species. Then in another case studies in Italy, we use the same approach on YouTube. I will not give details on the methodology because Beatrice will do about that. And what we did is asking microecological questions, such as the ontogenetic deepening of the dusky grouper. So this is an emblematic species for conservation, very effective in recovering when you establish an MPA with huge individuals. But if you look in the literature, the ontogenetic deepening, so larger individuals are more often caught or visible in deep water, was never quantified. And we were able to quantify that using spearfishing videos, as you can see here. And then also in another grouper, we were lucky because this species is a thermophilic species. So it's quite common to catch it and see it in the south part of Italy. But due to climate change, right in the middle of our study in 2012, 2013, it started to extend the distribution to the north due to climate change. And we were able to see that, as you can see, the average latitude of the videos is increasing there. And then we did a couple of follow-up studies on these species, and we discovered that the optimal thermal conditions and the remote sensing of sea surface temperature was able to predict the changes in distribution. And also we compared the data from YouTube with scientific literature, GBIF, and local ecological knowledge of fishers. And as you can see, YouTube is quite robust with respect to the other methods. So we can use this kind of data, for example, for understanding changes in distribution of species that are targeted of recreation fishers. And then in another study, we accessed comments of recreational fishers that were posting after watching the videos of catching this species, the bluefish, which is a cosmopolitan species. You have it here also in South Africa. And this is a study based in Italy as well. As you can see, we were able to georeference also most of the videos. And once you access the comments, you have this large body of text, you can run sentiment analysis. So you have this vocabulary and you can associate emotions to the words and then run some quantitative graphs and analysis like this one. So in this case, you can see that spearfishers on average express more joy and trust and positive emotions than recreation anglers. The main reason is because many anglers got hooked in discussing about catch and release in the videos, and this is the main reason for having these negative comments about the behavior they are showing in the videos. And then you can associate these sentiments to the content of the discussion. Running this kind of content analysis is quite dense analysis, big table. I will not get into the details, but something you can do with combining these two information, sentiments and content analysis, on these species, we discovered that within the same discussion, within recreational fishers, some of them were expressing negative emotions because the species in Italy is perceived as invasive because of some traits, and they are speaking about this is a plague, we need to remove it, our fish will be a memory. And then others, no, we like it, it's aggressive, it's jumping out of the water when I hook it, I want to fish it. So this is the kind of information that can inform you about this polarity discussion within the same group of fishers that maybe you want to manage, but they have totally disparate and opposite views on the species that you want to manage. And then combining this approach, sentiment analysis, with climate change, and again, the white grouper that is changing the distribution right now, with a student of mine, Lucia, we were able to describe for the first time a gradient, a geographical gradient of emotions across latitude of recreation fishing catching these fish. So fish that are caught by Italian recreational fishers in the north part of Italy are expressing on average more joy and surprise than those that are catching these species in the south part. So, to wrap it up in terms of YouTube analysis and what we can do and what can be useful for recreational fishes, as we have seen, this can be used for monitoring, even if there are many biases and we know little about it yet at the moment, so, but in the future this can change, hopefully. We can study social ecological dynamic within our target community that are interacting online, or maybe ask questions about microecological patterns, because if they have this diffuse network of observation and we can access them, this can be powerful in terms of resolution of the studies. But above all, I believe one of the key aspects in the future that was not developed so much, and you did some studies about that on Facebook, and what I'm very interested in, what Judy, the other keynote speaker, will speak about communication, is use this kind of approach, digital platform, for communicating and engaging with the recreational fishers. And I will show you what we are doing at the moment about that. However, the key barrier for implementing this approach, as we discovered and we knew about that in a workshop in the conference in Melbourne, that was a workshop organized by Paul Venturelli, me, and Asta Auz, someone with a worse surname than mine, Asta. So many of the researchers, but managers and practitioners said, yes, interesting, but I don't know how to mine the data. You need some programming skills, Python, R, I don't know it. So this is something that we are trying to solve, and Beatrice will speak this morning in this room about that. And now we can use machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing to mining this data, interpret them, and make them available for the community. So we know that this is a small spoiler, the reach of used social media in recreation fishing research. This is part of the machine learning that we are developing, but if you want to know more, please go to see Beatrice's talk. So my concluding remarks is that what I learned in this conference, I learned that you can take a recreation fishing system, in my case, spearfishing fish behavior, and start asking questions about basic ecological stuff on predator-prey interaction. Then you can use that and go speaking with people that are working on wolf, large carnivores in Alaska, and they will understand you because you are asking the same questions but on a different system. And this is well integrated in this conference because we have physiologists, behavioral ecologists, and other kind of scientists that are coming from this kind of background. But at the same time, in the same room, you can have people, and this is, as I told you, integrated in this chapter of how to use ecology in recreational fisheries. But as we have seen yesterday in the workshop about human dimension, in the same room you have people that are using social science and other theory to ask questions about the complexity of social ecological system and how we can integrate human behavior, in particular recreational fishing behavior, into these dynamics. And I think this is truly unique and was embedded since the beginning in this conference, and I really enjoy that learning from these aspects at the conference. And as Robert said, I think this is the book I would have liked to read when I was a PhD student or an early postdoc, not because it provides you all the solutions, but I believe it provides you the background and the framework in which you can move to really advance our knowledge on recreational fisheries and management. Do I still have time? I'm going. Okay, so this is the last one. So our couple of outstanding questions that I would like to share with you that I would hope we can discuss this week at the conference. The first one is how, regarding the first part of my talk, how does fishing-induced fear modify behavioral mediated trophic cascades, and subsequently the impact at ecological and fisheries dynamics. This is something that we know it's happening, but we don't know how to quantify it properly, in particular in field research. And this is something we are doing with Ricardo, which is a PhD of mine. We are trying to look at this kind of trophic dynamics, simulating spearfishing impact, and we already have some data, which, of course, feed experiments are quite noisy, but we could have some answer to these questions in the following years. If you are interested into that, please, I would like to discuss more about that. And in terms of YouTube, obviously, as you have seen, we can use this approach for testing so many questions, innovative methodology, so no problems to publish those kind of studies. But I think the key point here is that how we can use social media monitoring of recreational fishing and reveal patterns of information flows among recreational fishers, and how we can use this for leverage and use this kind of information for changing the recreational fishing behavior. And this is something that we can reconstruct from YouTube, as you can see here. So we are able to see how the information flows among recreational fishers on social media platforms. And if you dominate the information flow here, you can provide information and inject information. This is the best effective way to communicate with recreational fishers on their own digital culture environment. So to end my talk, this is the scheme I presented before with the number of people participating to this conference. So do not worry about keeping the correlation linear. It's not the point. I think the point, you made it clear, it's keep the interdisciplinarity and diversity high. And 27 countries, 30% of low-income countries, and 30% of students, it's big. So I believe that the South African conference is on path with that. And I think this is the key point of these kind of conferences. And to conclude, there is tradition in this conference to publish a special issue out of it. You will receive information how to contribute to that, but if you are an early career researcher and you want to experience some editorial activities, please approach me, because we are building the guest editorial team for managing the special issues of fisheries management and ecology. So do not be shy. If you want to try it, please approach me and we can do. There is some free spots to participate as guest editor. And that's it. Thanks to all the people that contributed to shape my career journey. Not all of them are here. And to finish up, I believe my title should have been this one. And what I learned, but still learning, and what I will learn in this conference in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Sure, I was just about to open the floor for questions, so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are some outliers there. A number of people doesn't really count because the 2020 was online conference. That's why you have this big part of attendance. Was online. I don't know. I cannot really answer to the questions. And the number of participants, I believe, it's out of our control. It depends from local dynamics. I remember in Australia, there was a lot of local communities because recreational fishing is huge, and maybe there were resources to attend the conference. The same maybe in Europe, but in each country there is different dynamics, in particular local dynamics. What is driving the most the number of participants is local dynamics. Because as you have seen, number of country participating is always the same, and also diversity is always the same. So yeah, maybe it's not the best indicator to look at that.
More questions from the floor? Everyone's very quiet this morning.
Firstly, that was really inspiring and really, really interesting. But I wanted to ask you a question about when you're monitoring social media comments, for example. What regard do you have for what I guess segments of recreational fishers may be engaging on social media versus ones who, even though they use social media, may not necessarily be using it for fishing content, and what impact that might be having on the insights that you can gain?
Yeah, this is a key point. From local studies that we published and we are publishing, we know that at about 20% of people are posting catches on social media, but it's local. If you change region or country, this can change and can change over time. I guess that with new regulations, people will stop posting a lot of pictures, maybe, I don't know, if they are more strict to monitoring recreational fishing. But the key point is that if you look at how many people are consuming the information and maybe just commenting, this goes up to 60–65%. Obviously, in 10 years, this can change a lot. Maybe it's not on YouTube or Facebook. There will be a new platform. I don't know. But I think we should expect an increase of this kind of engagement. Maybe not so much on sharing catches, but they are consuming it a lot. Because there are not only catches, you can find tutorials, you can find even influencers speaking about the new regulations, criticizing it, environmental issues like impact of recreational fishing with respect to commercial fishing. So all kind of topics are covered in these kind of platforms, not only catches. And this is fasting evolving. So yeah, it's a key point to understand that. Yeah.
More questions? I've got a question.
Yep.
I'm interested in how you think AI and chatbots and all of the things that are coming to affect us soon might influence your ability to mine social media.
So I'm not an AI person. We have this kind of expertise in the department. There are a couple of technicians that are into deep learning and computer vision in particular. And as you will see in Beatrice's talk, it's changing the game for us because all the studies I presented was manually cross-checking on the video, which is maybe if a couple of thousands videos is feasible. But now in a test that we are doing, we are working with 23,000 of video, and we were able to analyze them quite quickly and get out 17,000 catches from this video with computer vision. So it's a game changer. The key aspect is this kind of data will be available in the future. We don't know.
I'm kind of particularly interested in how kind of AI and chatbots might be kind of commenting on the posts that you're kind of looking at, because that's something that's happening more and more, and it's going to affect the way that we do surveys as well, because if we put out online surveys, then bots can come and respond to them. So it's a very interesting challenge for us.
I believe if you use a part of machine learning that is natural language processing, there is sections and aspects that you can detect this bot commenting on that. So they can easily detect languages and sarcasm as well. So I believe that there are some components that can detect both. Commenting on that.
Another question.
Yeah, really interesting talk. Thank you. Covered a whole breadth of topics. I'm wondering, you talked about fisheries-induced evolution in the zebrafish, and you talked about like behavioral evolution. But I'm wondering, especially because they're such a model fish, are folks looking at epigenetic inheritance and the inheritance of those behavioral responses over generations? Do you know?
Okay, yeah. Obviously, the experiment I presented is quite limiting in transferring it to real scenarios because it's zebrafish and simulations. I know. I think it's just intriguing to have this kind of data for then build an hypothesis in the field. And the fact of, I mean, the aspect of evolution is that if you want to study that in open system like marine system, it's almost impossible. And these kind of experiments in common gardens in which you can control everything except of the treatment and the control that you have are very important to establish a cause and effects. This is the key point. And then in terms of epigenetics, we recently published a small paper on Journal of Fish Biology looking at epigenetic markers, and it seems that size selections is not affecting it too much. Broadly, like methylation of the DNA and these kind of indicators seems not very responding to the size selections. But we don't have the measurements at the beginning of the experiments and after the selection. It's just 8 generations after the selections, generation 13. So it's a limiting conclusion, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
So, as I said at the start, I think we're going to have to close there because we're going to move on to the actual presentations now. But as I said at the start, please do come and find Valerio and talk to him. And Valerio, we've got a little thank you for you. And you're welcome to open it now if you want to. Or later.